Hello and welcome to the video on Intro to Story Cards. Let's just jump right in. So what is a story card? Well, the best definition and the one you should remember right away is it is a promise of a future conversation. So it's promise of a conversation. I like to say promise of a future conversation. Just to say it is a brief note that you would take to remind yourself that in the future, we're going to have a deeper conversation about this thing. It is not intended to describe anything in depth. There is supposed to just be enough information on the card to remind you later what you wanted to talk about. And yes, originally and ideally, it is literally a 3x5 card. It's just a little note to self that says, hey, let's remember to talk about how we log in, or how you add things to the cart, or how the display looks on the checkout page, right? It's just a note. Did I overemphasize that? It's just a note, a promise of a future conversation. And if what you've got to say about it is more than will fit on a 3x5 card, then you're not getting it. It's supposed to be a note, a reminder, a little phrase. Now, don't make it so short that you don't remember, like later you come back to it and go, what in the heck did we mean there? And that'll happen sometimes. But chances are actually in the future you'll understand even more what you meant by it, and it will make more sense because it's in the context of the rest of the work. So the chances of you actually forgetting what it meant are very, very slim. All right, let's talk about the parts of a story card. This is something called the Connextra form. You don't have to use this format, but it's a nice way to start. It's kind of like training wheels. You don't have to start with training wheels on your bicycle when you're a kid, but it's a great way to get started because it gives you all the things you need in order to stay upright. So the idea is you write this little phrase, as a something, I would like some feature or function so that then I can do something or whatever value I'm going to get out of it. So this helps you focus on not just what you're doing, like what the feature is that you're implementing, but why you're implementing it. Right? Those two aspects at the beginning, who is it? And the end, why do they need it? What's the value that they're getting for? Because that's really what you're striving for, is to look at what's the real outcome you want to receive out of doing this piece of work. You don't want to just do work for work's sake. You want to be targeting an outcome so that you're actually going to meet the customer's needs. Another reason to focus it so much on that outcome is if you focus on the what a lot more than the why, you may end up creating extra work for yourself that you really didn't need to do because you were focusing on what. And sometimes we'll focus on if you focus on the why, you'll find shortcuts to the what. So as a user of Amazon, or as a person searching for a book on Amazon, I would like to be able to search by ISBN number so that I can quickly and very accurately, precisely find exactly the book I want, not waste any time. Right? That's an example. So you can write these wrong too. So let's take a look at what that would look like. As a carpenter, I would like to use my hammer to remove a nail so I can fix my mistakes. Looks pretty good, right? But what it's done is it hasn't focused on the why enough, and it hasn't focused on the what. So the I would like should be more focused on the what it is that they're trying to do, and the so that is the why. So that the why looks pretty good. It's the what in this one that's not. because that limits it to use my hammer to remove a nail. I have one option. Not good. Because if I change it to this, as a carpenter, I would like to remove a nail. So you need to be thinking when you're writing these, how can I pare this down to the bare minimum? What do they really need to accomplish? What is the outcome? The outcome wasn't that they wanted to use their hammer. Well, maybe if it was a new hammer and they were excited about it. But chances are they're really wanting to remove the nail. That's their intended outcome. Focus on the outcome. Because if I focus on the outcome here, I would like to remove the nail so I can fix my mistakes. That leaves me open to a number of different options of how to solve that problem. Right? You see, when I define exactly the tool to be used or the details involved, then I lock myself into one way of thinking. And you want to leave it open-ended for creativity and just to have maybe better options. You may not only have a more creative option. Creative is not always the goal, but you may wind up finding a better way to do it. All right, so let's dive into some detail on each of these pieces. What is an actor? An actor is a person who uses the product or interacts with the product. An actor is not a system. Okay? Let me make that painfully clear. Some people will still do it. I think it detracts from your ability to, again, come up with the best outcome, focusing on the outcome you're trying to get. Sometimes people will say, as a database, I would like to be backed up so that I can recover if there's a failure. Well, the database doesn't really have feelings. It doesn't really want to be backed up. Sorry. It's not a person. It doesn't have a need for that. Now, as a system administrator, I would like the database to be backed up so that I can recover quickly and serve my customers and delight my customers. As a customer, I would like the database to be recoverable so that I don't lose data. Those are both valid ways of writing that. One's with an internal, one's with an external client. Some people get really anal about it always has to be an external client. Well, sorry, that I don't fall into that camp. I'm a little bit more pragmatic than that, and internal customers are completely valid customers. You will sometimes write story cards for yourself as a development group, right? As a developer, I would like to, I don't know, enhance something about environment X so that builds go faster. It's perfectly valid. You can do things for yourself. It's just focusing on the outcome. What outcome are you trying to achieve? All right. What's a feature or function? Well, pretty simply, it's the thing. It's the outcome that you're trying to get. Something simple. You can't make it something really complex, because if it's really complex, then you're just going to find yourself splitting it and splitting it and splitting it so that you can actually get something that's useful or quick enough to build within a sprint. So try and get them down to be granular. I know people, and I've promoted this myself, who say a story should not be more than 1 day's worth of work. So you need to break your features down that granular. I really like the idea because it gets you, well, there's a lot of benefits to it. One of the benefits right away out of the gate is if a story takes more than 1 day and you planned a story to take a day or less, then you know there's a problem immediately. If a story is designed to be, 2 or 3 days worth of work, then when do you know that you have a problem? After 4 days, right? After 3 or 4 days. If it's 2 or 3 days, it takes you 3 or 4 days to figure out you've got a problem. So that's not good. The other thing that it does is it actually speeds up the planning process, because the work is supposed to be a day or less. Therefore, you're not going to take any time to do points poker, right? We'll talk about points poker later, but points poker is a way of measuring the size, complexity, and uncertainty of a piece of work. So you look at it and you size it to be, some number of points. You don't have that problem. You don't have to do estimates like that anymore. So that whole points poker process, the whole game goes out of the window because you don't need to. So it actually saves you a bunch of time. Now, breaking the stories up to be that granular takes a lot of time. So there's a balance there. I'm not sure it's a complete wash. I think that the points poker almost always remains about the same amount of time to do. And as you get better at breaking stories into one-day increments, I've seen that actually gets faster over time. So points poker remains about the same, but it's called the no estimates method. The no estimates method makes it actually becomes faster over time to get through the work. So I think it's a good model. I don't think it's the only model. So take that for what it's worth. Feature or function should be simple. It should be one thing that it does, and it should be something that the customer needs, wants, and brings value to them, right? And that brings us to value. So what is value? Well, people are often, they get really hung up on this because they think dollars. And they're like, I can't put a dollar value on the features that I'm delivering. Well, there's not just dollar value things. There are also non-dollar value things. Surprise, surprise. And people also will often think, well, it has to be, to my customer. Well, not really. There are business values, internal and external, and there are personal values, right? Value that a feature will bring for you personally. So you can put any of these on there. If it is financial business value, those are the easy ones that you can see. Well, the checkout cart on Amazon, you can put a dollar value on fixing a bug in there, on adding a feature in there, because I'm sure they had numbers when they decided to go to one-click checkout. There's a huge value to them because the fewer clicks between a desire and a checkout, the more checkouts you will have. Every step in that checkout process reduces the number of sales that are actually made. So that's why they put that baby in there. In case you didn't know, you probably did, but you can see the direct impact that it has on revenues, profits, opening new markets, right? There's financial ramifications, but there's also non-financial ramifications for your business, right? Maybe you're looking to increase customer satisfaction. It's hard to put a dollar value on customer satisfaction or market growth. There may be features that you're implementing to improve your reach that don't have a direct dollar value associated with them, but they're expanding your markets, which will eventually result in financial remuneration. Beating the competition, that's a great one. And you can think of a million of it. These boxes are not exhaustive. Good Lord, please don't think they are. These are representative, so you get the idea of what these are. I recommend that when you're creating stories, you make this chart on a wall and you go through it for every card as you're going through. What is the value being delivered? Of these four, which of these is it? Is it all four? Is it a couple of these four? Is it one or two? Go through all four of them. So personal. Are you going to get a bonus for it? Would you get a raise? Are you going to get some other kind of commissions or things like that? Those are value, right? Is your customer going to, this is personal, so this is internal personal for you. Is it going to, well, this is financial. So then you can look over here. Is it going to let me try a new technology? Is it going to help me with my career growth? Is it going to provide better work-life balance? Is it going to give me more free time, right? You could look at so on the left-hand side, I like to go down and come up with multiple personas, who are all the people who, and this I only did 3 here, right, with internal, external, and personal. But you could go through and say our channel partners, our resellers, our wholesalers, our support desk, our salespeople, our marketing team, the customers in North America, the customers in South America. What about the customers in Asia and Europe? And you could take this and get pretty granular on the different markets and what the value is to them, as long as there's differentiation between those things. If there's not, good Lord, don't waste your time. Just just do what you need to do. Don't go crazy with it. But that gives you an idea. It makes that process of defining value a lot easier. This is an area that I see people fail in a lot when I come to them as a coach and say, are you tracking value? What's the value you're delivering for these things? And it's often not being tracked, and it should be. So get it out there. The reason that you want to track it is because it's motivating. If I'm working on a piece of work, I need to know who it's for. And we'll talk later about personas, but you want to have actually like a name and personality and family and all this stuff about your personas, and how are they benefiting from it? What is going to delight them about this feature? And that motivates me to do better work when I know that, oh man, I'm going to make my customer's life so much easier, or our channel partners are going to love this because it's going to reduce their costs, or it's going to make the visibility into the products that are coming to them so much easier for them to see what's available, blah, 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 fix inventories or something. Value is so important. All right, how to write a good story. This is a great little acronym that you really should run every story through when you're writing them. It's called the INVEST criteria. There's a link to Bill Wake's article on it, because he's the guy that came up with the INVEST criteria. Good job, Bill. So it's like this. I is for independent. The story should be independent of the other stories. That way you can prioritize them. Now, if you start doing the no estimates method, where your stories are down to the size of 1 day's worth of work or less, then it becomes very hard to make them independent. But still strive for independence, because that allows you the most flexibility in implementation. It also allows you to do those things like we were talking about earlier in another deck about the getting rid of work at the end that's lower value, right? So independent and negotiable. There should be negotiation available between the team and the product owner as far as what's it going to look like, how's it going to be, how can we develop this. If as a product owner there's so much detail brought into it already, you're cutting off the development team's ingenuity, and you are actually lowering their creativity, their engagement, and their desire to do a good job. So it is actually in your best interest to define less and encourage them to do more, right? Come to it with open hands and say, hey, I have some ideas about this, but I really wanted to hear your ideas first, because you guys work with this technology, and get the ideas and negotiate. It doesn't mean that you just have to go in there to the discussion of it and whatever they say goes. It's a negotiation process, right? It has to serve both you and them. But even the process of negotiation is going to create engagement. Okay, V, it has to be valuable. Duh. It has to be something that brings value to your customer. It's interesting, though, how often the work that we do is work, not value. So focus on value, the delivery of value at the expense of all other work. It has to be estimable, if that's really a word. You have to be able to figure out how big it is. If you can't figure out how big it is, estimatable, then it's too vague, and you need to go to the drawing board and expand on the detail for it. S, it has to be sized appropriately. This one used to be, it has to be small, but we say sized appropriately because there's a hierarchy of cards sometimes that people use called where they go, they'll have an epic, which is obviously like, the Iliad is an epic novel, and it's a story of stories, right? So an epic is a story that contains multiple stories. So an epic is not small, it's big, but the stories that eventually make it up are sized appropriately. They're small. T, it has to be testable. If you can't test it, again, just like being estimable, if it's not testable, then you don't understand it well enough. If you can't write acceptance criteria for it, you don't know what you're doing. So then you have to just go back to the drawing board, do a little bit more research, figure out what you want to do. Maybe you want to do something called a spike, which is essentially a card in the backlog for a sprint that says, we are going to put in X number of hours of research. And it time boxes the research so that, because research can go on and on and on and on and on forever, and it kind of forces your hand to research hard with an outcome in mind, so that you can make a story estimable and estimable and testable.